Right. So some of you don't know, but I actually, at this point in my life, I know, Bob, I had to think about it. At this point in my life, I actually love cooking. At this point in my life. It has not been significant in my life prior to this point in my life. But at this point in my life, I actually love cooking. It's therapeutic for me. I have an element of a creative, and it allows me to get into the kitchen, to pull out some things, to put them together using a recipe as a guide, and to put my own flavor on it, right? So I enjoy it. My wife and children would say, I never cook the same thing twice because I don't know what I did. But one of the things that I consistently use, probably because of childhood, growing up as a child, we always, don't judge, we always had a bowl of onions on the table for every meal. Every meal, a bowl of onions is on the table. My father loved onions, so we always had a bowl of onions on the table for every meal. So one of the things that I constantly use, consistently use, are onions in many of the things that I prepare. And I don't know if you cook and you've ever taken the time to pull out an onion to put it in a meal and to begin to work with it, to peel off initially that top thin layer, right, that you need to get rid of, and then to continue to peel the onion, all that stuff getting between your fingers if you don't wear gloves, right? And as you're peeling the onion, one layer at a time, one layer at a time, one layer at a time, trying to get to the core of the onion. Sometimes while you're peeling it, if you got a real good onion, before you know it, stuff start coming out your eyes, right? Before you know it, the scent, the essence of the onion starts to fill you, and as a result, tears begin to flow. But you're peeling the onion because you're trying to get to the core of the onion. You want to use the onion, but the core is really where the essence is, where the beauty of the flavor is found in the core. But in that process of peeling, again, sometimes we shed tears to get to the sweetness of it, the best part of it, the essence of it, that's going to add the most value to your meal. As I thought about the whole idea of peeling an onion, I thought about the fact that oftentimes in relationships, we oftentimes are like onions, right? We oftentimes in relationships, because of life experiences, things we've been through, people we've encountered, we've developed layers, right? And if you're going to be in relationship with us, you just have to understand that we have layers. And oftentimes, in order to get to the place where we can really experience the essence of who you are, the beauty of who you are, the sweetness of who you are, the aroma of who you are, we have to be willing to work in relationship to pull back the various layers. But the reality is sometimes in pulling away those layers in relationship, those layers sometimes are filled with hurt. Those layers sometimes are filled with pain. Those layers sometimes are filled with bad experiences that for the individual and for the person in relationship with them can cause tears. But the investment of time to pull back the layers for the sake of relationship, it really is a worthwhile investment. So what we want to talk about today in fixing it, mending relationships, we really want to use as an analogy or an acronym the word peel, P-E-E-L, peel. And here's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about if we're going to peel back layers to fix and mend relationships, that the first part of peel is a P. It's prepare. Can somebody say prepare? The first E is embrace. Can somebody say embrace? The second E is extend, extend. Can somebody say extend? And then the L is love. Can somebody say love? So let's peel back the layers using this acronym to think about how we can fix or mend or make or create healthier relationships so that we can avoid conflict using Colossians chapter 3, beginning verse 12 through verse 14 as our scripture. Colossians 3 and 12, Paul says this, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. What's the P in peel? Thank y'all for paying attention. The P in peel is prepare, right? So the first thing we want to do if we're going to peel back the layers is prepare ourselves for healthy relationships. Prepare ourselves for healthy relationships. Listen to the argument that Paul makes in Colossians 3. Therefore, anytime you see therefore in Scripture, you should ask the question, what is therefore? Therefore, right? Therefore, based on an argument about who you are in Christ, based on what he's already told us above about our relationship with Christ and how Christ has made a difference in us and how we are new because we are now in Christ. Therefore, listen to what he says, those who are chosen people, those who are holy, those who are dearly loved, therefore, because your identity has changed, because you are no longer who you were, but you have a new identity. God has chosen us. God has made us holy, which simply means that God has set us apart for him, right? So holiness is just he set us apart for him. God calls us his dearly beloved. We have a special place in the eyesight of God, a special place in relationship with God. Because of our new identity, then we should have new clothes. You hear me? Because of our new identity, we should have new clothes. So he tells us what to put on, right? So we need to prepare ourselves by making sure we put on the right clothing, right? So how many of you are new to the Midwest? Any people new to the Midwest, like within the last year or so? Couple of years, anybody? Okay, most of y'all from the Midwest, right? So you know in the Midwest, when wintertime comes, you better prepare yourself. Right? Even though the winters have been mild in comparison, right? You don't go out in 10 below, right, weather with a little bitty old jacket on. No, you need some layers, right? You need layers. You need to put on some layers, get ready for that Hulk, especially if you go up near the Chicago area where that wind comes off the lakefront, right? It will eat you alive if you're not prepared, right? So you prepare by putting on proper clothing. If you go to the beach, right, you don't wear a suit, not a jacket and coat and tie on. No, you wear a swimsuit. You put on some shorts. Why? Because you want to prepare yourself for where you're going, right? So Paul tells us that we need to prepare ourselves by making sure we put on the right clothes. Now, y'all look nice. Y'all coordinated and whatnot, right? Everybody looking good. You thought about what you were going to wear, right? But did you put on these clothes? Right? So listen to what he says. Prepare yourselves by putting on these clothes, compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. The phrase communicates, put on these clothes with intentionality. Just like you brush your teeth in the morning with intentionality. Have intentionality to put on these clothes, right? So put them on with intentionality. Be deliberate about putting them on. So in the morning when we wake up, we want to say, God, can you please help me to put on compassion? Compassion is simply this idea. Help me to interact with people based on an understanding of the fact that they are human, and as human beings, they have a history and they have a journey. And because they have a history and a journey, then I want to interact with them understanding that they may not be like me because they're not me. Does that make sense? Help me to put on kindness, right? So help me to intentionally do good to others, right? To not be rude. To not be mean. We went to a place last night. I'm not even going to get a name. We went to a place last night in the drive-thru, right? We place our order. We get an attitude, right? We placing our order at the restaurant that you working at, but we getting an attitude, right? We go to the counter, we pay what the price was, we get attitude. I'm like, oh, why can't you just be kind? Like, thank you so much, right? Right? Be kind. Don't give people attitude. Put on kindness. Put on humility. Humility is not to think less of yourself, but to think of yourself less. Right? Put on humility, right? Not just humility, but to put on gentleness, right? Gentleness is being able to not be harsh in our interactions with people, because, right, when we're harsh, then that kind of messes with relationships. And then put on patience. Patience is being able to suffer long, right? Being able to understand I need a long fuse with people, right? So I want to be patient with people. I want to give grace to people, right? Put on these things. Now listen to what he says. We prepare ourselves by putting on the right clothes. Imagine how our relationships would be different if we put on these every day. Right? If every day, for the people in our home and for our children and for our family members, for our coworkers, if every day we intentionally, right, say, man, I need to make sure I put on compassion. I need to make sure I put on some kindness. I need to make sure I put on some humility, right? I need to make sure I put on gentleness. I need to make sure I put on patience. Before I go out, right, I don't want you to get the stuff that I got. I want to take off this other stuff, and I want to put on proper clothes to represent Christ and be who Christ has called me to be. Does that make sense, anybody? So I would suggest that a part of the challenge with us relationally is that we're not preparing ourselves by putting on the right stuff. And because we're not interacting with one another with compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience, then it creates issues. So during the wintertime, you can choose not to wear gloves and be outside in the cold for an extended period of time. After a while, your hands are going to start to ache, right? And you can develop what they call frostbite, which seems small and insignificant, right? but it's going to cost later on. It's going to have some consequences for not wearing something as simple as gloves to avoid something as simple as frostbite. Likewise, not putting on the proper virtues or characteristics, the clothes that God has called us to put on, right? What it does is it creates unnecessary problems. Because I couldn't be patient with you, it created unnecessary problems. Because I couldn't be kind and instead I was rude, it created unnecessary problems. Because I couldn't extend compassion to you, it created unnecessary problems, which then leads to conflict. Am I making sense, anybody? All right? So a part of our privilege is to say, God, help me to put these clothes on. Right? Now, if you think about it, I remember times for our kids, especially when they were real small, they didn't want to put their clothes on. Right? So it's like, we putting these clothes on. Right? So sometimes like, God, will you put these clothes on me? Whatever it is, we want to make sure we prepare ourselves relationally so that as I have all of this on, compassion and kindness, right, and humility, right, and gentleness and patience, that when I interact with you, you sense that. And some of that can diffuse what's going on inside of you. Does that make sense? All right, here's the second one, right? So the first one is prepare. What's the first E? Embrace. So here's the second one. Embrace we over me. We over me. Colossians 3:13, the first part says, bear with each other. Can somebody say, bear with each other? Let's say it again, bear with each other. All right? So bear with each other. This is more than tolerating one another. I'll let you sit on that. It's more than tolerating one another. We know what it's like to tolerate people, right? And some of us know what it feels like to be tolerated, right? So it's more than that, but it's choosing to prioritize the relationship over our individual preferences, right? Choosing to prioritize the relationship over our individual preferences. So this is what it looks like for us to put we over me, right? So let's just be honest. People are difficult. Is that right? We all have quirks. We all have imperfections. We all have flaws. We all have them, right? But bearing with one another means we embrace the person, understanding that we all have flaws. So part of the reason that we find others difficult is that we're different. Some of us are difficult simply because we are different. Our differences, both from nature, so we're different because of nature, how God has wired us, but we're also different because of our nurture, our experiences in life. So we're different again because of nature, how God has wired us, but we're also different because of nurture, our experiences in life. For example, how many of you were raised or grew up in the South? Just lift your hand. Raised or grew up in the South. All right? Look around. No, South people, raise your hand. Look, all right? All right? Okay. How many of you, any people from the East Coast? Any East Coasters in the house? Got a few East Coasters in the house? All right. East Coast is only a few of y'all, so don't say anything too loud, right? But when East Coast people sometimes interact with people from the South, right, even though some of your family members, when you went to interact with some of your family members from the South, right, you're thinking like, why they move so slow? Right? Like, why they talk so slow? Right? Because people on the East Coast, they used to talking fast. They're used to moving at a fast pace, right? So sometimes when they interact with people from the South, it's a little different, right? Any people from the West Coast in here? West Coast. Got some West Coast people? All right? All you Midwest people, raise your hand. Midwest, we different, right? So people from the West Coast may look at people, right, from the Midwest and like, man, y'all so laid back. Right? Right? Whereas West Coast people typically have kind of this progressive vibe. They're always open to new stuff, right? New ideas, right? Right? And Midwest people are more conservative at times, don't talk as much, not as open about things. They kind of keep things behind their back. Many Midwest people. Right? And that's just where we're from, right? So that's the broader area of where we're from, right? Right? So if that shows up in that way, we have different generations. So we have some people who were born before the 60s. If you were born before the 60s, can you just wave your hand? It's all good, right? Praise God, you're still here, right? Born before the 60s, right? Those of us between the 60s and 80s, wave your hand, right? Right? 80s to 2000, wave your hand. All right? All right? 2000 on, wave your hand. All right? Now, here's what happens. Depending on what generation you are from, you see things different, right? You expect things to be different. You have a different mindset based on your generation, right? And here's all I'm trying to say. All of those differences play out. And it's the differences oftentimes that make it difficult for us to interact with one another. It makes it difficult for us to relate positively to one another because I don't understand how you think like that. I don't understand why you would say something like that because to me it's not a big deal. But to you, it's a huge deal, right? Based on where you're from, based on when you were born, based on how you were raised, based on your life experiences, right? So it's a small thing. Some people might prefer face-to-face conversation, right? Other people, they're going to send you a text. It's like, why you didn't tell me? I did. I sent you a text. Like, what you mean? I sent you. Did you read it? No, I didn't read the text. Why you didn't pick up the phone and call me? Because I sent you a text.